Hey up everybody, welcome back to the I'll Do Cycling YouTube channel, where today I am going to be previewing the Velogames Tour de Suisse, the next round of the Stage Race Championships. This will take part immediately once the Criterium du Dauphiné finishes, so we will have lots of Velogames action to be keeping up with. In this race, we've got some very good riders, including Remco Evenepoel and Alexandr Vlasov. They are the most expensive riders at 22 points. And I think that this is very well warranted when you consider that they are the favourites going into this race. You've got Martinez just behind them, and according to the bookies, these are the favourites for the race. Evenepoel perhaps has some unproven GC results. I know he's done very well in lots of stage races before, but not any as big as the Tour de Suisse. So this is going to be a very important race for him to prove himself to a lot of people who, like me, perhaps doubt his GC capabilities for like the Vuelta later this year. But Evenepoel with a TT at the end of this race really suits him. It's just a matter of can he survive those mountain stages on stages 7 and 6, I think they are. But he should do quite well on a lot of the earlier stages. They're quite lumpy, very much like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which of course he won this year. So Evenepoel is a good choice. I expect him to be on a lot of teams. Vlasov very much likewise. The only issue I have with Vlasov is that there's also Higuita and Schachmann in this race, and they might be the riders which Bora Hansgrohe decide to go with when it comes to some of the puncher finishes earlier on in the race, which might take away from the points that Vlasov can get. Saying that, Vlasov should be finishing on the podium of this race. His TT has improved a lot this year since moving to Bora Hansgrohe, and I think that he should be finishing on the podium unless he of course crashes or falls ill for some unfortunate reason. Martinez, very much similar to Vlasov, he has an issue in that there's Yates and Pidcock in this race, so there's no guarantee that he will be the chosen man for all the stages. Saying that, I do think that Martinez is faster than Yates, and I believe that Pidcock will be a domestique. However, there is no guarantee of that. It's just a hunch of mine. I think that Martinez has shown this year, especially at Basque Country, which he won, that he is a very capable GC rider. I think that he will be a very good choice, especially since he's got a very solid time trial. Yates, at 18, just underneath him, has been a bit inconsistent this year in the stage races, so I'd be a little bit less likely to choose Yates over Martinez. I'd be favouring Martinez for sure, but saying that, Yates should certainly be finishing high up in GC in this race. I just don't think that he will be scoring quite as many points as Martinez will. Higuita at 16, I think his opportunities are going to be relatively slim. Basically, he won't do that brilliantly in the reduced sprint sprints, and even if there are reduced sprints, then they might go for Schachmann anyway. So I think that Higuita for 16 is a little bit risky. I think that Pinot is another slightly risky option, considering how his kind of recent history has been, especially like last year. But he has looked much better this year, especially like the Tour of the Alps and also like the Mersan Tour the other day. I think that Pinot would be a fairly good option for a top 10 finish. It's just that I'm a little bit apprehensive about picking Pinot, just because I was picking him when he was like DNFing races quite a lot. Jonasgear for 14 is okay, should be finishing top 10, but probably not the greatest choice in the world. I would be favouring Gino Mader, who is aiming for a podium in this race according to the Bahrain press release, and I think that's well within his capabilities. He did very well at the Tour of Romandy, and I think that he should be a very good choice for a lot of teams. Geraint Thomas is a bit of a questionable one at 14. I'm not too sure about how he's going or what his kind of roles are in this race. He could be a good pick, but I'm going to be probably staying away from him. I just haven't seen enough this year from G to warrant picking him. Hershey has just won the Cantons Argau, which is kind of like a very punchy finish, and there's lots of riders in that race that I'll be bringing up in this video. I think that Hershey should be the choice for UAE team Emirates, but we do also have Covey and Rui Costa and Ulissi and Soler and Trentin, and who's going to be the domestique, who's going to be the guy going for stages. I'd say that Hershey would be the safest one to pick, especially since he won today, but there's no guarantee of that, and for 12 points that is quite a lot of an investment for a rider who may or may not be the leader of a team. Sepkus, if he can become GC Cus, then that'll be absolutely brilliant, but there's no guarantee of that either. They also have Dennis here, who could provide another GC option for them. Perhaps some other 12-point riders that I'd choose, maybe Hershey, maybe Woods. Woods has looked alright as well recently. Schachmann's kind of coming back a bit. So all the 12 pointers are decent, but they're not kind of outstanding, and I wouldn't say that they're all guarantee picks that you have to put into your team, but they're all decent enough. 10-point riders, you got a Rensman who's coming off a year. I think he'll be quite tired. Kuznetsov hasn't looked quite on fire this year, so I'm a little bit cautious about picking him. Dennis, like I said, there's a TT, and if he can find those legs that he had at the Tour of Romandy, he would be an incredible choice for your team. It's just that his motivation seemed to wane and kind of then come back really strong for Dennis, so I'm not certain that he's a great choice, just because he might decide, I don't really fancy this race, and I don't have any sources that tell me that how he's feeling at the moment. So a little bit of a risky one is Dennis, but he can, pay dividends quite handsomely if he is really in form. Fulsang, I think, is really good for 10, considering that he won the Mersan Tour, a real hilly day, and I think that, especially when you consider that last year, it's very easy to forget that he came second in GC in this race last year. And for 10 points, I think that Fulsang is a real bargain pick, and I'd probably say that he's a strong recommendation of mine to put onto your teams. Other than that, Lutsenko, if he can find Dauphiné form from last year, that'll be alright. Masnada will be a domestique. Matthews, there's also like Dion Smith and Caden Groves here, so there's no guarantee that Matthews is going to be the sprinter for Bike Exchange, so that's a little bit risky. Pidcock, like I said earlier, will he be a domestique? Will he get his own opportunities? And then you get, Soler and Lissi, like I said earlier. You're not sure if they're the leader or not. Similarly, for Movistar, there's Alex Arambarou, but you also have a little bit further down. You've got Gonzalo Serrano. Both of them fulfill the category of puncher, so no guarantees of each one of them being the leader for Movistar. Clement Champassan did look pretty good today, which is good considering he's coming back from injury. Could be a nice outside option for GC. Klon was also really strong today. He should be the man for Lotto Soudal. As long as their team makes a lot of the stages hard, Klon should have a really good opportunity at kind of contesting for a lot of stages. Nielsen Paulus sometimes does a decent GC, kind of 15th to 20th. He's got an okay TT. But if he can find that sprint that he had at like San Sebastian last year, he'll be a real dangerous choice. It's just that he hasn't quite proved that yet this year. Sagan, again, a little bit disappointing this year. I can't fully recommend Sagan as a good choice, unfortunately. You've got Jay Vine as well, who's just finished second in GC, I believe it was, at the Tour of Norway, behind Evenepoel. So, Vine won't be beating Evenepoel here, but he could finish top 15 on GC, which would be a really, really good result for him. Getting into the 6-point riders, Asgreen could be getting assist points for Evenepoel and then also doing well on that final TT. Could see him getting somewhere near 200 points, which I think would be a very good return from a lot of the 6-point riders. Bevin, of course, won a stage at Romandy, and his TTing doesn't seem to be quite as good as a few years ago, so take that into consideration. There's also quite a lot of hard terrain here, of which I'm not sure Bevin will make it over. He might also be a domestique for Woods and for Fulsang, who are more suited towards the terrain, so be a bit apprehensive there. Mathieu Bergado won a stage at Paris-Nice earlier this year and also looked pretty good at the race today. But there's also like Sagan and Turgis in his team, so not quite sure whether he'll be the man for their team, but he does look incredibly strong. You've got Cockard, who, if there is some kind of sprint, he should be one of the favourites for it. It's just that it's a matter of, can he get to those sprints? That really kind of puts the question in my mind as to whether he's a good choice or not. Philippe Gilbert has looked okay recently, but I do expect them to work for Klon more than likely. There is Caden Groves, of course, but he might be, not make it over the climbs. And there's also Matthews here, there's also Dion Smith here, so no guarantees there either. Damien Howson would be a decent GC choice for Bike Exchange. He does seem to be the best climber here, but again, I think given the quality of the GC riders here, Howson doesn't really stand too much of a chance of finishing as either top 10, maybe a top 20 would be a decent one. Kung, if you just wanted somebody to do well in the TT at the end, then he's your man, but other than that, the terrain doesn't suit him enough for him to be kind of picking up hundreds and hundreds of points. He might get somewhere between 100 to 200 max, in my opinion. Zandlo Morisa, puncher for Alpes and Phoenix. Interestingly, he is the number one on their team, so he is clearly given some kind of leadership. I'm just not sure what kind of form he's in. Last we saw of him was at Liège, where he finished, I think, inside just the top 20 or so. Then more towards the bottom of the 6-point list, you got Jake Stewart, again very similar to a lot of the kind of sprinters here. Will he make it over those climbs? You got Van Wilder, who's coming back from injury after Liège, bit of a GC rider, TT rider, but Again, how's he doing after that injury? I'm not too sure. I think he might drop on the climbs. But similarly to Asgreen, he'll pick up assist points for Evenepoel and might do well on the final TT. You've also got right at the bottom, Jos Zimmerman. He did well today. Should be the fastest man for Intermarché, considering that Christoph will likely be dropped on a lot of the climbs, so Zimmerman would be a really good choice for a lot of teams. 4-point riders is a bit... there's not many to pick. I must say that Haller is probably the best for the assist points from Vlasov, and if he can make it to a sprint, he would be a pretty good option as well. And then other than that, you've got, I'll pretty much just choose the riders from Team Switzerland. They'll get in the break a lot, or maybe choose one of the TT riders. Tom Scully sometimes pulls out a decent TT, but hasn't done in a while, so watch out. That's not a guarantee. Joey Roskopf is another one. Johan Price Peterson, under 23 world champ last year. And then you also have Chad Hager as well, would be another TT rider. But those guys are all a little bit questionable. I'd say that you're better off trying to turn those 4-point riders into 6-point riders and securing more kind of consistent point scoring riders. So that is my preview of the Tour de Suisse. Is a little bit longer than usual, but I think there was a lot of detail to go into, especially with riders' recent form. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Anybody that I've missed, who are you thinking of putting onto your teams? And all that is left to say is to keep safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!